at the opening of the 5th ANC National General Council, President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered the political report in front of the delegates, including ANC's National Executive Committee members and former Presidents Thabo, Mbeki and Kgalema, Motlanthe. The report reviews the progress made by the party since its 55th National Conference in 2022. SABC Political Reporter Samkele Maseko and Sakina are both there. And let me pass to Sakina. Sakina, handing this one over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Leanne. Welcome back to Birchwood. And of course, a midterm review is what it is essentially about for the ANC taking stock. And I'm joined by Samkele Maseko. And let's just start with the mood, Samkele. Having attended previous NGCs, the mood is different.
Indeed, the mood is different. They're not singing as much as they sing in ANC conferences. Maybe that message by Kgalema that you can get 10 stars for singing, but content dololo has gotten to some of these particular delegates before the leaders of the ANC came into the plenary hall. I think Mpumalanga was in, Eastern Cape and a few other provinces. There was a bit of chanting, but when Kgalema called them to order, they did stop singing. After a while, he said, no, you can continue singing for a bit, but they didn't just sing as much as they used to sing. It was more of listening to the organizational midterm review report, which is about 3 hours delivered by the Secretary General, and the political overview report, which sounded and infused a lot of issues when it came to the governance of the state, G20, the constitution of the government of national unity, the outcomes of the general elections in 2024, how the ANC lost its support base, how they had a lackluster door-to-door and a lackluster campaign in 2024. It was very much a myriad of infusing state and party into the political overview report by the president, infused with the balance of forces geopolitically, particularly around the various forces that are dominating in the country currently on the airwaves when it comes to the misinformation of white genocide and white Afrikaner land grabs. That is a disinformation largely perpetuated and pushed by organizations such as AfriForum and the dominance of Donald Trump trying to impose South Africa's economic trajectory, and South Africa pulling back, saying that we're a sovereign state, we will not be bullied and determined and told by another sovereign state on how to go about your own domestic policies. So it was pretty much like a state of the nation infused with a little bit of politics.
And in there lies part of the conundrum, because it sounds as though, when you're listening to the State of the Nation address, whether you're listening to the January 8th statement, whether you're listening here to the political overview, it sounded like the same thing. But as you say, at least the political report did delve into some of the issues that speak to organizational renewal.
On the issues of the organization, we've tend to see President Ramaphosa move away too much on speaking on organizational matters and leaving it now to his Secretary General Kgalema, just opposite to how he never used to do that with Ace Makashule. At first it did, but the matter of 5 years issue then ultimately made him take stock and to pull the organization towards himself. But now he's a bit more free, giving it to a person that he trusts in the form of Kgalema. Hence, you could see, even when he was delivering the political overview report, there's particular segments, when he was speaking about the relationship of the ANC and the South African Communist Party, he did say that they've been meeting with the SACP, the relationship is at a cul-de-sac, they've done everything they could, but the SG in the midterm overview report would speak more extensively on those particular issues, on the renewal of the ANC, even so, saying the SG will do so, SG will expand more on these particular issues. So you could see that there is some sort of a synergy between these two political leaders and faces of the African National Congress, politically and organizationally. Whether they are at the strength that they should be at, that is debatable, knowing the electoral fortunes that they've suffered. But if you look at the midterm report by the SG, it took and drew comparisons of where South Africa was in the beginning of democracy to the first 15 years, where economic growth was growing, the economy was growing at about 3%, and ultimately the creation of the middle class structure, the middle class bulge, and how the ANC then lost the middle class bulge in the suburban areas, which speaks to the weaknesses of the ANC branches, and drawing comparisons to the voter patterns, the voter base, comparing it to the general membership and leadership of the African National Congress at a grassroots level, and how their failure failure to respond to societal issues has ultimately led the ANC to leaving society behind in building of the National Democratic Revolution, which will be more debated today in the various commissions that will take place.
Indeed, and of course, the national dialogue speaking to that issue of social cohesion. And interestingly, the emphasis that the ANC places on that national dialogue. And one has to ask about the base documents and what the ANC, is the ANC in a way conceding that perhaps, it may no longer be the leader of society in terms of, where the ideas are generated, who sets the agenda, and, how South Africa perhaps discusses matters pertaining to the country.
When you look at the midterm review of the Secretary General, it speaks about, particularly in the battle of ideas, he went extensively about the changing perceptions and influence within society of the mainstream media, saying that mainstream media no longer plays that influential role in shaping the thinking of society, particularly in a digital age where social media has taken over, where people are opening up their own podcasts. The traditional way of communicating has ultimately changed, which means the way of infusing and indoctrinating society in towards a particular thinking format will ultimately be changed. About 2 years ago, the president of the ANC did admit in one rally that the ANC perhaps is no longer the leader of society, where he spoke in that document where he said the ANC stands as accused number one and that they need to draw a line in the sand between renewal or corruption and ultimately perishing. And it does definitely tell you that they have conceded that they are no longer the leader of society as they used to be, due to the dwindling electoral fortunes, due to the economy not performing in the manner that it should be performing. For instance, this morning I bumped into one gentleman from one important economic strata within society in the mineral sector, and that particular gentleman at that coffee shop said to me, "Samkele, we've got an interest in what's happening in the East Rand." Ultimately, the economy is the main issue. We just hope that there are no under-dealings of leadership changes and all of those sorts of issues that don't speak to the economic revival of the country and to the bread and butter issues that South Africans need. Hence, they are so moved away now and no longer so much inward looking. And it's now the DA that's saying that perhaps we are too inward looking and we are not looking and taking society along. So both parties are at a cul-de-sac.
Well, it's going to be interesting. And of course, we're going to unpack a little bit more some of the issues that Samkele raises as well in terms of the policy directive and the recalibration thereof. Which policies, how will it be recalibrated? And of course, the elephant in the room, the implementation factor. So how is the ANC going to deal with this based on the base documents, which is another point of discussion in terms of the documents that have been circulated that will need to be discussed here at the NGC.